For a long time now, I've had an idea about cause and effect within the Zelda world. From 1997's Ocarina of Time, I've had a feeling in the pit of my stomach that the lines between good and evil are a lot more blurred than Nintendo initially wants us to believe. See, we've been told now for nearly 40 years, and who can believe that this amazing franchise in just 4 years will turn 40, that Zelda is the embodiment of good, Ganon, Demise or whichever evil entity we're facing next is the embodiment of evil, and Link is the hero that must cut through evil in order to save the good in the world. Skyward Sword follows up on that by literally making Zelda the purest creature possible, imbuing her with the spirit of the goddess Hylia, and doubles down on the evil effort, not just with Girahim, who turns out to be a puppet for the true evil in the game, Demise. Now, before we start, I want to make something very clear. For those of you who have never played through this game, we're going to be reaching some pretty big spoiler territory in this video for the rest of the game. Now with the boring warnings out of the way though, let's get on with it. When we first meet Demise, and we will later on in this episode, he appears to us as a gargantuan creature, almost comical in appearance with a large, relatively nondescript body covered in what appears to be scales with a large mouth and 8 large white toes. He's quite possibly the strangest looking enemy not just in this game but across the series, but I'm not here to body shame the poor cuddly guy. The Cookie Monster is a massive pain to fight though. On the surface he seems relatively simple. You run between his legs and hit those toes to give him a good nail clipping. And then once he's feeling more hygienic, he'll fall to the floor where you can bosh a ceiling spike that's lodged in his head, further into his skull, causing permanent brain damage. The idea is that we're using the spike to reseal the evil energy, and eventually we will cause him to fall down into the pit into the centre of the stage, where you as the hero can finish the job and reseal him. In reality though, this isn't a free pass, and it presents us with a frustrating boss fight just after we face Moldorat and have been given maybe 10 minutes reprieve. The first series of hits is easy, and lets us see the pattern of play here, but the moment he takes damage he ups his game, and suddenly starts to produce red shockwaves around his feet whenever he takes a step. These things hurt like hell, and cause a bit of a stun effect too, which slows you down as he races to the top of the arena, where the old one, Bruce, and more importantly the half-completed Gate of Time lays. If the sealed one reaches the top of the sealed grounds, it's presumed that he crushes the Gate of Time, rendering all plans to save Princess Zelda null and void, and therefore evil conquers. Of course though, you're the hero of the skies and you're not going to let that happen. But I just want to rewind a little. See? Before all this goes down, we see the Old One instruct Link that he needs to collect the Sacred Flames and use a particular song to open the way to the Isle of Songs, where we'll find our first hint as to where the flames reside. It's only because we presume the Old One knows what she's doing and we take her to be a wise figure given the fact that she becomes a Sage of Shadow and Ocarina of Time, that we carry these acts out like a blind dog soldier. Through Link, she has a Gate of Time summoned, but as it stands it remains closed due to the lack of power within the Goddess Sword. She informs you that you are fated to be the hero of the skies, and not just rescue the princess, but also the whole world, as the evil is greater than anyone could have expected, apart from Impa, who knows all about what lurks beneath. Almost immediately after imparting this wisdom onto you, the ground begins to shake, and once again Impa understands the ramifications of this, whereas both yourself and Groose are completely clueless. She knows the evil is about to rise, that evil is about to wreak havoc, and it's all down to you to stop it from happening. This is where things get clever. The Zelda games are not known for having much dialogue at all. Well, voice acted dialogue at least. The storyline is actually laid on pretty thick in the games, especially in this installment, but the lack of voice acting has been something that has had fans wondering for years. There is no doubt that it's a deliberate choice on the part of Nintendo, and not just a thing where cartridge or disc sizes would need to be doubled to make it work properly like in the old days of the Nintendo 64. In fact, the lack of vocals is done deliberately so you can decide the tone as the player. In the instance of the seal breaking, Impa is unusually calm. I understand she's old and has seen and has experienced a lot, but Impa here literally states that she expects this to happen, albeit not so soon. And while Groose is literally shaking like a leaf, the Old One is very matter of fact in her explanation of what the hero should do next. She even states in this passage that she expected the seal to react to the summoning of the gate, something that she enforces that you do. There's a lot to unpack in this segment of the game for me, but for me the most interesting part is the reaction and lack of reaction by the characters around us. Later on in the game, the Old One is revealed to be Impa, or at least the incarnation of, as she aids the 1,000-year-old version of herself in aiding the hero. Wow, that's convoluted. But in any case, she's still revealed to be a version of Impa, and this is the reason why we'll be referring to her as both the Old One and Impa throughout this video. Impa's reaction in this segment of the game is very telling though. She's seen this coming, foreseen it and expected it. So how on earth does she do this? Is she psychic? Is she capable of seeing the future? Or is there something bigger at hand? Like the Hands of Time. Zelda, at its very best, is a game all about time. Time is referenced over and over and over again. and time travel is absolutely nothing new within the series, seeing as Ocarina of Time sees you literally travel back and forth 7 years through time repeatedly. And Skyward Sword is absolutely no different, as the game centers around you traveling via gates of time to 1000 years prior to the current time. Impa is seen traveling through these gates at the end of the first 3 dungeons in order to protect the goddess Hylia, and we've already explored in a few episodes that this Impa may well be the reason why so many of the items are hidden in so many dungeons within the Zelda series, and she may also be responsible for the creation of artifacts such as the Lens of Truth and the Ocarina of Time. It certainly seems like she's aiding the hero into defeating evil that she's foreseen, but this all seems far too convenient. I mean, let's put it in the most simple terms possible. If Impa is helping the good cause, then why does the world have to suffer so much? In the meantime, why do the plans of the evil entity need to come to near fruition before the hero can save the day as per Impa's instructions? How come it's only once the hero is already on his path to saving the world do things go suddenly so horribly wrong? Let's take a look at a few of the past entries into the series to show you exactly what I mean here, and then we'll finish up by looking at Skyward Sword and we'll find out exactly why Impa isn't completely innocent. Impa shows up in 7 of the mainline titles, which isn't a huge amount when we have a series that spans across nearly 20, but her impact in every title she's in cannot be understated. And also, while she doesn't appear in Twilight Princess, we will still look at her counterpart Impaz, who is 100% not Impa. We begin with the first time we see her, in The Legend of Zelda on the NES. She's a relative unknown at this point in time, as is the whole world of Zelda. Her story is that when Hyrule was under attack by Ganon, Princess Zelda ordered her to flee and find the hero who would be able to save them. She was given chase to as she went about her quest, but unfortunately was eventually caught. She is saved in the end by the hero, and Impa tells him the story of what happened and requests that he finds the princess. It could be argued that in the earliest rendition of the game, not much character development was given, but once again Impa acts as the catalyst for the main story. Without Link finding Impa, he is not to know that he is to become the hero. However, because there's already a war waged and we know that Ganon's plans are nefarious and already underway before Impa can move in and tell you to get a move on, she literally acts as the go-between between the hero and the princess in this instance. She's given the job of setting out Link's quest to him, and this is, generally speaking, her main role throughout the series. In fact, we don't even know about the Sheikah tribe at this point, if we play in release order. But if we play in chronological order, we can understand now why Hyrule is at war with Ganon's forces. The Legend of Zelda is the second to last title in the Downfall timeline, the timeline in which Link is defeated at the end of Ocarina of Time and new heroes must be born in order to return the world back to some semblance of normal. The war is already in full swing by the time we get to this game through Triforce heroes, and as such, the role of the catalyst fueling both fires as it were is not required. Impa is now at a stage, or this incarnation at least is, of wanting to fully help with the war effort against Ganondorf and protecting the princess, because she knows that her bloodline is hiding more than just words that make it clear that someone should help out. There is a high chance that her willingness to help out is more that she feels obligated to, after so many generations have brought so much destruction upon Hyrule, as they train the hero to defeat the evil that comes within each incarnation of Princess Zelda. Link's adventure isn't just the black sheep of the family because its style was so wildly different from the original Zelda title and then additions like A Link to the Past, but also because this is the only game without a true power struggle, such as a main antagonist like Vati, Demise or Ganondorf. In fact, the game sees you trying to awaken a princess from a former time via the use of 6 crystals that must be returned to the game's dungeons, in order for the Triforce of Courage to awaken within the hero. With this, he can save the day, save the princess, save the world as it were. Because there is no new incarnation of Zelda, so to speak, the evil has not rearisen, and therefore there's no threat to the world. However, Impa is still the catalyst for this game. As Link arrives at North Castle in order to see Impa regarding the Triforce appearing on his hand, she's startled, and then proceeds to show Link a room with a sleeping princess inside of it. He is told by her that he should return the crystals to the palaces, and then the Triforce will awaken, and so will the princess. Once again, Impa is the catalyst for what makes the hero just that, a hero. The palaces are trials, and Impa will know of the dangers within these places before the hero sets out. If he fails, the hero is not worthy of the Triforce, and if he succeeds, she's just found the legendary hero of this era. Of course, you succeed. And now that we have no villain, a Zelda that is alive and not a reincarnation, no evil left in the world, we've set the world completely straight within the Downfall timeline, which is of course why the timeline ends here. There isn't much to say about Impa here because once again we haven't got a fleshed out character for her, or any of the characters within the world, so basing anything off this would be wrong, but it's important to note her role as the catalyst once again. As there's no evil in this game, barring Link's shadow, which is more of a note that the gods have decreed that the Triforce wielder should be free of any doubt about himself than any proper wrongdoing, she can't be held accountable for any of the actions of the wrongdoer. So let's move on swiftly to the first game where Impa is a little more fleshed out and capable of being a true middleman between between good and evil, Ocarina of Time. Impa is first seen in this game inside of the castle grounds, where she is sworn as a protector of the royal family. Ultimately though, this role isn't quite right for her, as she manages to protect the princess but not the king, who falls seemingly during the 7-year reign of evil to Ganondorf. She is later seen fleeing the castle with Zelda upon a white steed, where Zelda launches the Ocarina of Time, a precious instrument with powers of manipulating time, to the hero who she is told to collect the 3 spiritual stones in order to open the door of time. In doing this, Link is trapped inside the sacred realm for 7 years, as he's not strong enough, mentally, to hold the power of the Triforce. After all, we soon see what happens when someone who is not mentally strong enough gets hold of the Triforce. It splits into 3, and the segment that most reflects the holder gets transferred to the holder of the Triforce, whilst the other 2 get sent to other hosts who represent their attributes. During this 7-year stretch, the world changes by an indeterminable amount. Where life has flowed and flourished, only death and decay remain. The townsfolk have either been forced to move, taking over a settlement that doesn't belong to them, or no longer exist within the world, and where happiness thrived, now monsters inhabit. This world is complete nightmare fuel, especially for someone who's been locked away for 7 years, unable to see what has unfolded as time has gone on. Ganondorf in this section of the game has essentially nearly won. His last act is to gain the Triforce in full, and kill the hero in order to stop him from thwarting his plan. His plan is 90% complete. That is, until Link wakes up from his slumber in the Sacred Realm and is imparted all of the wisdom in the world by Rauru, who acts as the Oracle character within this game. So, where does Impa fit into all of this? Well, let's take a look. Impa comes into the game at the stage that Zelda asks you to collect the 2 spiritual stones of fire and water in order to stop the evil that is Ganondorf. But at this point in time in the game, there's absolutely zero proof that Ganondorf is actually evil. He's actually seen inside of the king's throne room as you look through the window at him, bowing and seeming to pledge allegiance to the kingdom of Hyrule. The only indication that he is evil is that the Deku Tree states that a man in black cast a curse upon him that would eventually kill him. Later on we also find out that he asked the Gorons for their stone also, and when he turned it down he had a temper tantrum and sealed the Dodongo's cavern with a boulder that, let's face it, the Gorons really could have just eaten through, considering, you know, they kinda eat rocks. In the final third of the child section of the game, we also find out that he has asked King Zora for the Zora Sapphire, but as King Zora did not have it, and Ganondorf did not know this, he cursed the deity Jabu Jabu with, again, a parasite-like illness that would eventually kill him also. Princess Ruto would allow herself to get swallowed by Jabu Jabu in order to try and heal him from the inside, because now she's a fishy animal doctor, and she knows that the only way to heal a god is to go inside of it, Moby Dick style. These things are of course, yeah, all pretty evil. But let's face facts here. Even with the curse upon the tree, Ganondorf didn't succeed in gaining the stone. In fact, he didn't with any of the spiritual stones, and yet here comes the hero. He does his thing, and is granted all of these stones pretty quickly. While you have to enact a quid pro quo arrangement in that you do something for these characters of the Deku Tree, Darunia and Princess Ruto if they do something for you, they still give over their prized possessions pretty quickly, despite no one seeming to tell them why the hero needs the stones. After all, the why is never mentioned by any of these characters. In fact, until Ganondorf gets his hands on the Triforce, there isn't enough information to really damn him completely. Let's say, for instance, Ganondorf is after the stones in order to get into the Sacred Realm. How do we know he's actually going to manifest evil and try to rule the world before he gets his hands on the Triforce and tells us so? Don't get me wrong, yeah, he does inform us of his plans once the Master Sword is pulled from the pedestal of time. But how do we know that it's not the actions of 2 children? One in particular with a very strong fantasy about the struggle of good and evil that leads to this man actually believing that he is the bad guy. What if it's a self-fulfilling prophecy as such? When we first get to Zelda, she is so strong in her belief that the man is evil, but there's no logical explanation for why. We understand that later on he led the Gerudo forces in the Hyrulean Civil War that happened prior to this game, but at this moment in time he is bending the knee for the king. And besides, going to war isn't always an act of pure evil intent. Don't get me wrong, warmongers are not cool, but let's say you have a race of people who are stuck, confined to heats that could kill them, with creatures that pop up out of the sand and try to kill you wherever you walk. And let's not forget the wasteland that many could have walked into and lost their lives to as they're doomed to walk the sands forever. This place is a pretty horrendous place to live. And not only that, but their food supplies would also have been sparse. They couldn't stay there, but if it were decreed by the king that it would be there they would have to live, in the end I could definitely see the Gerudo uprising against this. It doesn't make the Gerudo evil to want better living conditions. Actually, the king is kinda in the wrong here by not allowing the Gerudo out of the desert. Zelda is so firm in her belief though. Ganondorf is the embodiment of evil. He must be stopped before it's all too late. Link must gather the stones and then open the gates of time and reach the Triforce before he does. And in doing that, it all goes horribly wrong. The thing is though, we already know that because of Skyward Sword, Impa can travel through time. We already know that Impa is the last of the Sheikah race left and has been for some time. From just these 2 nuggets of information, we can make a pretty powerful statement. This Impa is not an incarnation of Impa, such as Zelda is always a reincarnation of Princess Zelda. In fact, any game with a named Impa has the potential to not just be a new Impa, but the very original from Skyward Sword's past. She's travelled to and from each timeline, making sure the events of each take place, because if not, then the world ends before its due time. Impa is a literal oracle, not a metaphorical clever character, but a full-on all-seeing oracle who has seen every timeline come to fruition. She is the reason why the events happen in Hyrule, and without her, there's no timeline whatsoever. Impa travels from time to time, placing items inside of chests for the item to find, and facilitating his development so that he always becomes the hero of that era. Without her and the Sheikah, let's face facts here. The Lens of Truth never exists, so Link cannot traverse the Shadow Temple and find her as a sage. The Ocarina of Time never exists, so you can't enter into the Temple of Time to find the Sacred Realm. And the Mask of Truth never exists, so you can't talk to doggos? The second point there though is the most interesting. We've already explored the idea of the Sheikah mining away at the Time Shift Stones in order to create the Ocarina of Time. Without this happening, the Ocarina of Time never exists at all. And it needs to exist because without it, the Sacred Realm can't open, which means Link can never attain the Triforce of Courage. But in order for that to happen, Ganondorf needs to get his hands on the Triforce and it needs to be split into 3. Impa is the reason Ganondorf succeeds to begin with. The Sheikah deliberately aided evil in order for the greater good to be achieved. They are literally the shade of grey in the middle of the black of Ganondorf and the white of Princess Zelda. Not only did they make the Ocarina though, let's take a look at Impa's reaction to Zelda's evil daddy fantasies about Ganondorf. She not only doesn't intervene, I mean, what's the best case scenario here? Link gets the stones and is sealed away in the Sacred Realm, or the worst case scenario is that Link and Zelda die in the process. And by the way, yes, I'm implying that Impa knows that Link will get sealed away in the Sacred Realm. Her explanation of Ganondorf suddenly attacking the castle to me doesn't seem likely, as she knew when the attack would be. Enough to be able to make sure the princess had the ocarina in her possession and the horse was nearby enough to escape. But either way, there's no good outcome from this. Impa knows this and decides to take the princess and run instead of using her Sheikah magic to deal with Ganondorf before it's too late. Her role in this is not to help evil, but to help the self-actualization of the good character. But as the saying goes, we have to break a few eggs to make an omelette, even if the omelette comes with a side order of death and destruction. Impa almost straddles the line between good and evil, helping out whichever side helps the timeline play out. And this is true, although a little more accidental in the Oracle games. The Oracle games actually see Impa be not so streetwise and actually more careless than anything else. Her portrayal is of a portly nursemaid who has been sent to Holodrum and Labrynna from Hyrule by Princess Zelda. Her job is to take the Oracles back to Hyrule with her in order to protect them from danger, as the Oracles in this game, Din and Nehru, are of course incarnations of the sacred goddesses that made the land. In Oracle of Seasons, Impa is badly injured at the start of the game due to General Onox's attack. She puts her trust in the hero as he already has the mark of the hero, the Triforce, and requests that he helps the Oracle of Seasons, Din, to escape the clutches of Onox. In Oracle of Ages, Impa is possessed by Varan, the main antagonist of this title. This is short-lived as Varan soon possesses Nehru, his true victim, but once again in finding Nehru, Impa is the catalyst for this calamity to happen. This seems a bit more unwittingly, and because of her lacking ability in combat in these games, we should not presume that this Impa is the same one from Skyward Sword, although we know that she can time travel. So let's start there with unpacking this character. Is this the same Impa as the time traveller? The Sheikah race by this point in time should be non-existent. Remember, Impa is the last Sheikah in Ocarina of Time and she joins with the sages in the Chamber of the Sages, which indicates that perhaps she didn't make it through the trials of the Shadow Temple. This would mean that there are no more Sheikah. So either this Impa is not Sheikah, and is just a character named after the Royal Protector, or she is the original Impa from Skyward Sword. Given her nature in this game and how she manages to stay out of proceedings for the whole game, whilst given just enough information to be able to help the hero, and seen as items that are found in the dungeons in this game make absolutely zero sense. Like seriously, why would a gun that shoots seeds be in any dungeon? It would make sense that Impa has visited both of these areas of Labrynna and Holodrum, but I actually think that with this, the original Impa visited here before this Impa, the nursemaid that came to the lands. This is because she's seemingly a completely different character to the Impa of old. She seems friendlier and less cold towards everyone. She has zero fighting ability and her mind is weak, hence being able to be possessed, which is something untrue of any ninja. It's impossible therefore to say whether this Impa fits within the mold of having been a catalyst, despite with her pleading with the hero to save the chosen oracle of the game. She does develop the story a little bit, but it's completely cast out of the game the moment the Maku tree is introduced, as the all-seeing eye in the game. This Impa stands out like a sore thumb for me, so I won't be looking at her unfortunately as a basis for whether or not Impa is facilitating the evil occurring. So let's move on, and let's look at Twilight Princess. Now just how in the hell did this happen? We saw that in Ocarina of Time the Sheikah were wiped out, and yet here we are with a brand new Sheikah, an old granny who hides away in the hidden village and gets overtaken by evil forces. She is the epitome of a crazy cat lady, living on her own in an abandoned village with nothing but cats for company. And yet here she is, in the flesh, a real life Sheikah. Only that's not true now, is it? There is no evidence that Impa is a Sheikah at all. She has no creepy eye logo on her attire. She's cowardly, and she's unable to fight. But she does have some very interesting information that, let's face it, only an Oracle character or someone that's seen everything at least once would be able to see. First of all, she knows about an item that is found inside of the Temple of Time, and she contains a character of the Sky Book. She has knowledge beyond her means, it would seem, and this would indicate that she has experienced these things before. So maybe we're writing this old ninja off too quickly. Impa is a really interesting character who brings up more than one plot hole that could then be theorized upon. The first of these is how on earth she knows about the Dominion Rod. Another item that seems oddly magical is an artifact, and is made up of another blue material similar to the Ocarina of Time. In fact, this has some weird anomalous properties too, as the Dominion Rod can be used to bring structures to life, a mechanic in the game that was great fun to play with, especially within the Temple of Time dungeon. Given its abilities, its blue nature, and the fact that it could only be powered by the hero of Twilight, this artifact must be made from the same material as the Ocarina of Time, that being Time Shift Stones, and as such, it was created by our favourite little ninjas. If Impa knows about this existing, after all, there's only two characters in the game that even reference this thing, that's her and Shad, then there's got to be something up with that. Shad, we know, spends his time exploring and learning the lore of the game, much like I spend my time doing, so likely would have heard something in passing. But Impa lives a solitary, destitute life, and is on her own inside of a village. This indicates to me that she knew about the Dominion Rod and how it would come to help the hero of Twilight. In this instance then, that means that Impa has inside information, and could only mean that it was passed down from Sheikah to Sheikah. And now we get to the crux of it. That must mean that Impa is indeed a Sheikah. But they all died out, right? Well, yes and no. Sure, there are none left, officially, but we still have one that is confined to the Sacred Realm who now literally knows and sees everything. We understand that these guys are confined to the Sacred Realm, but what of the other one that we see in Ocarina of Time, the Sheikah doppelganger, and oh so eloquently named Sheik. At the end of Ocarina of Time, it is revealed that Sheik was Princess Zelda all along, but we didn't see Princess Zelda die at the end of Ocarina of Time, rather set the clock back 7 years. In fact, actually due to Twilight Princess occurring during the adult timeline, Zelda never even rewound time but allowed Link to continue on as the hero of time. That hero eventually died, becoming the hero Shade, but we have no idea what happened to the princess. We can presume that the Zelda within Twilight Princess is not the same Zelda as Ocarina of Time purely because of the amount of time that would have passed. At least that's what we've always been informed. But what if that princess just so happened to age and now her daughter was the new Princess of Hyrule? What if she cloaks her appearance because she's actually not an old woman who is wise beyond her years, but has genuinely lived to see through all the calamities that have unfolded because she is the princess from Ocarina of Time, and therefore Queen of Hyrule by this point. The next point to back this up is the fact that she has a character from the Sky Book, which is crazy considering that this is an ancient forgotten language that no one has seen in years, and it belongs to a race that are not even on this land but up in the air. How does she get hold of this in the first place, and why is it so important that she gives it to the messenger of the gods, the hero of Twilight? Well, without it, Link can't access the city in the sky. Therefore, he can't go get hold of the mirror shard that will help Link reach the realm of Twilight and put a stop to Zant for once and for all. She literally gives Link this book in order to help him finish his quest and thus facilitate the hero's quest. But Impa knows all of this already. She knows this as she was the one to place the Dominion Rod. She was the one who kept the character book, and she is the one that allowed all of this to happen. I mean, why on earth wouldn't she, I don't know, flee the village when the bokoblins turned up and give the book to someone who would 100% be able to give it over to the hero well in time for when he'd need it? Why wouldn't she become a little bit more forthcoming? The answer is simple. It's once again, not that she's inherently evil, but the timeline timeline needs to take place in the way that it does, because if not, something worse will happen. It's a butterfly effect scenario. If things change from the way they happen, if the timeline breaks and deviates, then we have yet another timeline to deal with. She's already failed once, and that's how we came to have 3 timelines now. The evil produced by Zant has to happen in order for the world to be saved by the correct hands. And that's the running theme of Impa and Impas. Impa in Breath of the Wild has well and truly transcended her role as the Oracle, and is a literal embodiment of wisdom. She is a little old woman, laden in the same robes as Impas in Twilight Princess, and is the literal facilitator of the storyline within the game. You go to her in Kakariko Village, and she full on gives you access to the main questline, the freeing of the Divine Beasts, in which you must defeat the Spirit Blight Ganons that have overtaken the Divine Beasts. She knows all about everything, and proceeds to tell you stories from 10,000 years ago, before you were cryogenically frozen, and knows exactly where you need to go, who you need to speak to, and all about your Sheikah slate. This in of itself would normally be enough for me to jump at the idea that this, again, very old version of Impa is the time traveller, or even perhaps a Princess Zelda or Sheik that had travelled through time to be the Impa of the Wild. But this is completely derailed by Nintendo's own publication, the Creator and Champion book, that states she's 120 years old. It's also not helped by Pura, who is Impa's older sister, despite being made to look like a child due to an experiment gone wrong. This proves my theory wrong here on the account of the fact that Pura is older, but also Sheikah, which means that the race are in the means of, although they haven't completed a comeback as it were. They're building a new line of Sheikah, but Pura's lineage here is interesting as she's pure enough of Sheikah blood to even have the red eyes of the ninja race. So this would mean that this Impa, simply put, cannot be Princess Zelda or Sheik in any way. It must be a direct descendant of Impa from Skyward Sword, which must mean the race did not die out, which means that the Impa of Time is not the last Sheikah. In fact, there must be more than one remaining. The events of pre-Skyward Sword, with the Sheikah dying out due to a war effort against Demise, didn't kill the entire race, just a large number. At least 2. A male and female must have existed still, and therefore they could procreate and pass the lineage down. In fact, for the bloodline to be pure enough for Pura to carry through dominant genes, a number of them must still have existed, or one of the few that did survive used the Gate of Time to come many years into the future, into the time of Breath of the Wild, with the aim of repopulating the Sheikah race. In terms of helping evil though, what impact does Impa have? Well, strictly speaking, in Breath of the Wild, not much. I mean, yes, she facilitates the storyline, but at this point in time, the evil has well and truly already taken over the world. She can't help things along because it's already at its worst point. Evil has already taken root inside of the world already. But 10,000 years ago, that's a whole nother story. After all, these robots that roam the earth, shine with a blue light, and have exactly the same markings on them as a Sheikah shrine, have been confirmed to have been made by the Sheikah. They were made in order for the hero to defeat Calamity Ganon, but failed after they were overtaken by Malice. This is starting to sound so familiar, right? Again, this all needed to happen. Presumably so that the events of Tears of the Kingdom can happen, and what I presume will be the ultimate and final showdown between Ganondorf and Link. Without these events, without the world being locked away for 10,000 years, none of this can happen, and as such, the Sheikah and once again Impa have aided evil in order to make sure good can triumph in the end, and that the timeline does not split once again. So this just leaves Skyward Sword, and how Impa impacts the game. At the start of this video I explained the fact that Impa knows far too much about the imprisoned, and alluded to the idea that it's all too convenient that he's released the moment that we see the second Gate of Time. She even states that she expected it to happen, that the Cookie Monster would return, and so therefore would demise. If she knew this though, why not try to stop it? The simple answer is, this is the only way to stop it, and it's also the only way to preserve the timelines. Impa has travelled freely from Hyrule to Hyrule in different eras, but that can't happen if one key event doesn't happen. If Demise is not beaten, and so with it does not curse the lands, Link and Zelda, to eternity inside of a giant loop of power, wisdom and courage, then the other eras just simply don't exist. The timeline stops at Skyward Sword. Skyloft still exists as Skyloft, life goes on as normal, and therefore there's never again to be a hero, a maiden, and the inevitable evil that comes with it. Impa is crucial to this happening, so everything has to happen by design. Impa is the architect, the designer of the story of the Zelda games to come, and without her planting her weapons, imparting crucial advice, and having items that she just shouldn't have access to, the rest of the game series just can't occur. Wow, there is a lot to unpack in this timeline regarding Impa, and she's a great character to look at because so much of her history is hidden between the lines. Let me know what you think though. Is Impa the great architect of the Zelda timeline? If you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It's all massively appreciated. See you later. Peace.